The encounter. Ethan moved slowly through the alien forest. The air was heavy and warm, and strange blue mist floated between the trees. He had been walking for hours, looking for rare healing plants that grew only here. His small bag was almost empty, and he knew he could not return home without them. But the deeper he went, the darker it became. The tall trees blocked most of the light, and the forest seemed to whisper with every step he took. A low growl broke the silence. Ethan froze, his heart beating faster. The sound came from somewhere ahead, hidden by the mist. He held his breath, listening. Another growl, louder this time, and the sound of something heavy moving through the undergrowth. Ethan took a step back, his boots crunching on the dry leaves. The forest became quiet again, but it was the kind of quiet that made the skin crawl. Then he saw movement to his right, between two giant roots. A figure was crouching. At first, he thought it was another human, but as he got closer, he realized it was a girl, an alien girl. Her skin was pale silver, her hair long and white like moonlight, and her eyes glowed faintly blue. She was breathing fast, clutching her side as if in pain. Her clothes were torn, and strange green blood stained her hands. When she saw Ethan, her eyes widened in shock. For a moment, neither of them moved, both afraid of what the other might do. "Help, please," she whispered in broken English. Ethan took a step forward, but before he could say anything, the growl returned. This time it was close, too close. The ground shook under heavy footsteps. The alien girl's eyes went wide with terror, and she pressed herself against the tree trunk. Ethan turned, and through the mist, he saw it. A massive beast stepped into view. Its body was covered in black, spiky fur, and its mouth was full of sharp teeth that glistened with saliva. Two yellow eyes burned like fire, locked on them. It was taller than any man, its shoulders broad, and its claws long enough to cut through bone. The beast growled again, a deep rumble that made the ground vibrate. Ethan looked around for a weapon, but there was nothing except a broken spear lying half buried in the dirt. He grabbed it, feeling the rough wood in his hands. The alien girl shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, you can't fight. Run." But Ethan did not move away. Something inside him refused to leave her. He had no reason to protect her. He didn't even know her, but leaving her felt wrong. The beast lowered its head, muscles tensing. Ethan stepped between it and the girl, holding the broken spear like he knew how to use it. His hands were sweating, and his legs felt weak, but he kept his eyes on the creature. The beast roared, and the sound echoed through the forest, sending birds screaming into the fire air. Then it charged. The ground shook as it came closer, faster than Ethan expected. At the last second, he jumped aside, swinging the spear. The sharp edge scraped across the beast's side, making it howl in pain. It turned and slashed at him, claws tearing the air where his chest had been a moment ago. Ethan stumbled back, breathing hard. The beast's eyes glowed brighter, and saliva dripped from its teeth. It came at him again, swiping with its claws. Ethan ducked and jabbed the spear at its leg. The spear splintered, but the tip went in. The beast let out a furious roar, thrashing its head. Ethan barely managed to pull back before the beast's jaws snapped shut where his arm had been. The alien girl shouted something in her own language Ethan didn't understand, but her tone was urgent. He looked around and noticed a shallow pit. A few steps away, hidden under leaves and vines, an idea formed quickly in his mind. He backed away from the beast, waving the broken spear to get its attention. The beast snarled and charged again. Ethan moved fast, stepping to the side at the last moment. The beast's weight carried it forward, its front legs crashing through the vines. It tumbled into the pit with a deafening roar. Dust and leaves flew into the air, and the ground trembled as it hit the bottom. For a moment, Ethan just stood there, chest rising and falling with every breath. The forest was quiet again, except for the beast's angry growls from below. He turned to the alien girl, who was staring at him with wide eyes. "You saved me," she said softly. her voice almost breaking. Ethan nodded. Though he was too tired to speak, he dropped the broken spear and walked over to her. She tried to stand, but winced in pain. Ethan offered his arm, and she leaned on him. They both knew the danger wasn't over yet. Somewhere in the forest, other things were moving, and Ethan could feel it in his bones. This was only the beginning. The fight. Ethan tightened his grip on the alien girl's arm as they moved away. From the pit, the forest was still, but it was not a safe stillness. Far away, something howled. Answered by another call even deeper in the trees, the girl limped beside him, her silver skin catching faint blue light from the glowing plants around them. Her name, she whispered, was Lyra. Her voice was weak, but there was a strange strength. In her eyes, she spoke in short words, struggling with English. That thing. Not alone. Ethan felt his stomach twist. He had guessed as much, but hearing it from her made the danger real. Behind them, the beast in the pit roared again. The sound shook the air, and birds scattered from the treetops in a black cloud. Ethan quickened his pace, guiding Lyra between thick roots that twisted like giant snakes. Every step felt heavier, every breath louder than it should have been. Somewhere nearby, branches cracked. Something was following. The sound was slower than the beast's charge, but steady, like a predator in no rush to kill. Lyra stumbled, nearly falling. Ethan caught her, and she clung to his arm. He could see green blood seeping from the wound at her side. She was losing strength fast. He needed to find shelter, but the forest didn't offer any, just endless trees, shifting mist, and the uneasy feeling of being watched. Then the growl came again, but this time it was from ahead. Ethan stopped, pulling Lyra behind him. Through the mist, another shape emerged. It was smaller than the beast in the pit, but still huge, its fur a pale gray, its eyes the same burning yellow. It moved with a slow, deliberate step, muscles rippling under its hide, its head lowered, and it sniffed the air. Ethan realized with a cold shiver it was hunting them by scent. He looked around for a weapon. The broken spear was gone, lost during their escape. All he had was a short hunting knife strapped to his belt. Against this creature, it was almost useless. But he could not just run, not with Lyra injured. He would have to fight. The gray beast snarled, and from behind them, the pit-roared beast answered. Ethan's eyes darted from one side to the other. They were trapped between two predators. The second beast must have climbed out of the pit. He heard branches breaking, heavy footsteps coming closer from behind. He had seconds to act. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward a narrow gap between two massive roots. The beasts roared as they gave chase. He squeezed through the gap, dragging Lyra with him. One beast's claw swiped at his back, slicing through his shirt. They emerged into a small clearing. The ground here was uneven, with large stones jutting out of the soil. Ethan spotted a tall, sharp rock that could be used as a weapon. He positioned himself in front of it, breathing hard. The gray beast entered. First, moving low, its eyes locked on him, its body coiling for a leap. Ethan stepped sideways, keeping the rock between them. The beast lunged, jaws open wide. Ethan dodged and shoved its head toward the sharp rock. The creature's side slammed into it, making it snarl in pain. But it didn't fall. It spun around faster than Ethan expected. Swiping at his legs, Ethan fell hard. The air knocked from his lungs. The beast's shadow fell over him. Its teeth came down only for Lyra to shout something in her own language. The beast hesitated, its head snapping toward her voice. Ethan rolled aside, grabbing his knife. He slashed at its leg. The blade cut deep, and the beast roared, blood spraying onto the ground. The second beast crashed into the clearing, its massive black form shaking the earth. It was the one from the pit, its fur torn and dirt covering its body. Its eyes locked on Ethan, and it charged. Ethan had no time to think. He grabbed Lyra and pulled her behind the sharp rock again. The black beast's massive weight slammed into the gray beast by mistake, sending both tumbling. The ground shook with their impact. Dust rose into the air. hiding everything in a choking cloud. Ethan coughed, pulling Lyra toward the far edge of the clearing, but a deep, guttural roar cut through the haze. Shapes moved inside the dust. The two beasts weren't fighting each other. They were moving side by side now, slowly turning toward Ethan and Lyra. Their yellow eyes burned like twin suns in the fog. They began to circle, one from the left, one from the right. Ethan's heart pounded. His knife felt too small, his breaths too short. The beasts lowered their heads, preparing to strike at the same time. Lyra whispered, "Run, or die." Ethan tightened his grip on the knife, eyes darting for any escape. The mist swirled as the beast stepped closer. Somewhere in the distance, a horn sounded a deep, strange call that made the beasts pause. They looked toward the sound, growling low. Ethan had no idea what it meant, but he knew one thing: the fight was not over yet. The rescue turns dangerous. The horn echoed through the forest, deep and haunting. Its sound seemed to pass through the mist like a living thing. The two beasts froze, their yellow eyes narrowing. They exchanged low growls, then slowly backed away, vanishing into the fog. Ethan kept the knife ready, his heart still racing. Beside him, Lyra leaned on the sharp rock, breathing hard. "What was that?" he asked, his voice shaking. Lyra didn't answer, her face pale as silver moonlight. Instead, she whispered, "Not good." The horn sounded again, closer this time. From the shadows, figures began to appear, tall shapes moving in perfect silence. They wore armor made of dark metal and bone, shaped like the claws of some great beast. Long spears gleamed in their hands, tips glowing faint blue. Their faces were hidden behind masks that looked like animal skulls. Ethan felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. These were not random travelers. They moved like trained hunters. Their steps were quiet, but every motion was sharp and ready. The warriors surrounded the clearing in seconds. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of their weapons. Then, the group parted to let someone through. A taller figure walked forward, his armor heavier, his mask shaped like a roaring beast. He carried no spear, only a curved staff made from a single piece of black stone. The way the others bowed their heads told Ethan this was their leader. The leader stopped a few steps away. Slowly, he removed his mask, revealing a hard face with deep lines and sharp, unblinking eyes. The air around him felt heavier. His gaze moved to Lyra first, scanning her injuries. Then his eyes locked on Ethan. When he spoke, his voice was calm but cold. "Human," he said, in near-perfect English. "You are far from your kind." Ethan didn't answer. The leader's eyes narrowed. He gestured, and two warriors stepped forward. Before Ethan could react, the spear tips were at his chest. He glanced at Lyra, who looked both relieved and afraid. One of the warriors knelt beside her, speaking in their language. Lyra replied quickly, pointing at Ethan and then at the forest. Her voice was urgent, as if she was trying to explain what had happened. The leader listened, his expression unchanged. When she finished, he said something short and sharp to her in their tongue. She flinched as if struck by the words, lowering her eyes. Then he turned to Ethan again. "You killed the shadow beasts." The leader said, "It was that or be killed," Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady. The leader's mouth curved in something that might have been a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That is why you live," he said. "For now." He gave a hand signal, and the warriors moved in. Two grabbed Ethan by the arms, their grips like iron. Another lifted Lyra gently, carrying her as if she were a child. Ethan struggled, but the spear tip pressed harder against his chest. "Walk," one of them said in a deep voice. With no choice, Ethan let them lead him. The group moved through the forest in silence. The mist seemed to part for them, as if even the air feared their presence. After some time, they reached a ridge. From here, Ethan could see the alien village below. It was built among massive tree trunks, bridges of woven vines stretching between them. Fires burned in large pits, their smoke curling into the night sky. Strange glowing insects drifted through the air like slow-moving stars. The village looked beautiful, but also dangerous, Ethan had the feeling this was a place where mistakes were not forgiven. As they descended toward it, the leader spoke without looking back. "You trespassed on sacred hunting ground," he said. Ethan stayed silent. The leader continued, "In our law, the penalty is death." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "But," the leader said, glancing over his shoulder, "you fought well." His eyes narrowed. "You will face the trial of worth." They entered the village, and the sounds of alien voices and distant drums filled the air. The warriors pushed Ethan forward, toward a massive structure built into the roots of the largest tree. It looked like a throne room carved from living wood. Inside, the air was warmer, lit by dozens of hanging fire bowls. The leader stepped ahead and turned to face him. "Rest," he said. "Tomorrow, we will see if the human is more than prey." Ethan's eyes moved to Lyra, who was watching him with a worried expression. She mouthed one word silently escape, but the warriors closed in, pulling Ethan away before he could speak. He didn't know what the trial of worth was, but in his gut, he knew it would be worse than the beasts. The chief's judgment. The night in the alien village was alive with sound. Drums beat in slow, steady rhythms, and strange animal calls echoed from the treetops. The air smelled of smoke and something sweet, like burning flowers. Ethan sat on the floor of a small wooden cell, its walls made from thick vines woven so tightly that not even light could pass through. Two warriors stood guard outside, their spears glowing faintly in the dark. He could see their silhouettes through the gaps, unmoving as statues. Ethan's hands ached from the tight rope around his wrists. Every time he shifted, the rough fibers dug deeper into his skin. He tried to listen for Lyra, but her voice never came. The only sound from outside was the low murmur of alien voices. It was impossible to tell if they were talking about him or not. Then, without warning, the guards stepped aside. The vine door swung open. The alien chief entered, his curved staff in hand. Up close, Ethan could see the strange patterns carved into the staff shapes that almost seemed to move in the flickering firelight. The chief's face was calm, but his eyes were sharp like blades. For a moment, he just looked at Ethan, as if weighing something in his mind. "You are far from your world," the chief said, his voice low and steady. Ethan didn't answer. "You fought beasts and lived," the chief continued. "Not many of your kind could do that." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "I didn't have a choice." The chief's mouth twitched into a small, humorless smile. "There is always a choice," he said. He stepped closer, the staff tapping lightly against the floor. "You entered sacred ground," the chief said. "That is punishable by death." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. The chief tilted his head. "But you saved one of my people, Lyra," Ethan said. The chief's expression didn't change. "Yes, the daughter of a warrior and a troublemaker." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. The chief's words carried a weight that made it clear Lyra wasn't safe here. "You will stand in the trial of worth," the chief said. "If you pass, you may live. And if I fail?" Ethan asked. The chief leaned forward slightly. "Then you will die quickly." He turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. "Human," he said without looking back. "Do not think this trial is only for your survival." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" The chief finally glanced over his shoulder, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "It will decide more than your fate. It will decide hers." The vine door closed again. Ethan sat in the dark, his heart pounding. The meaning of the chief's words twisted in his mind. Whatever the trial was, it wasn't just about him anymore, and that made it far more dangerous. The trial of worth. The first light of dawn spilled through the alien village. It painted the high bridges and hanging huts in shades of gold and blue. But for Ethan, the day began with the sound of heavy boots outside his cell. The vine door swung open, and two warriors stepped inside. "Come," one said in a deep, flat voice. They untied his hands, only to bind them again with a rope made of some strange Smooth fiber, it was strong, but light, and it burned his skin if he pulled too hard. They led him through the village, past curious eyes. Alien children peered from high platforms, their faces painted in bright colors. Elders stood in silence, leaning on staffs decorated with feathers and bones. The air was filled with a low hum, like a song sung without words. Every step Ethan took made it louder. It was not a welcome, it was a warning. They brought him to a wide, open space at the center of the village. The ground here was bare earth, dark and dry. Around it, hundreds of aliens stood in a perfect circle. Some wore armor, some carried weapons, others held banners marked with symbols Ethan couldn't read. Above them, bridges connected the great trees like veins. From those heights, more eyes watched. The trial of worth was not just an event, it was a spectacle. At the far end of the arena stood the alien chief. He leaned on his curved staff, his eyes fixed on Ethan. Beside him was Lyra, her hands bound. Guarded by two warriors, her silver skin seemed paler than before. When she saw Ethan, she shook her head slightly. The message was clear, don't trust this. The chief raised his hand, and silence fell. Human, he called, his voice carrying across the crowd. You stand before the people of the great trees, accused of trespassing on sacred ground. Ethan kept his chin up, meeting the chief's gaze. You have one chance to prove you are more than prey, the chief continued. Your trial begins now. The ground trembled. From a wide gate at the edge of the arena, something massive stepped into the light. It was a beast, but not like the ones Ethan had fought in the forest. This one had 6 legs, each ending in claws like curved blades. Its body was covered in thick, scale-like plates that shimmered in the sun. 2 long horns twisted from its skull, glowing faint blue at the tips. Its eyes locked on Ethan, and the air seemed to grow heavier. The crowd began to chant in their language, slow at first, then faster. The sound filled Ethan's head, mixing with the beast's growls. The rope on his wrists loosened suddenly, cut from behind. A warrior stepped back, tossing a short spear at his feet. Ethan picked it up, feeling the smooth, cold shaft. The chief's voice cut through the chanting. Survive, he said simply. The beast charged, moving faster than something that size should. Ethan rolled to the side, the spear scraping the dirt. He aimed for the beast's leg, but the tip glanced off the thick armor. It spun, tail whipping toward him like a tree trunk. The impact sent him sprawling. The breath knocked from his lungs. The crowd roared, some in excitement, some in mockery. Ethan forced himself to his feet. He noticed a faint gap between the beast's plates at the neck. It was small, but it was there. The beast lunged again, and this time he ran straight toward it. At the last moment, he slid under its body, jabbing the spear upward. The point struck the gap, and the beast let out a piercing scream. It staggered, but didn't fall. Instead, its eyes burned brighter, its movements becoming more violent. The chief watched without expression. Lyra shouted something in their language, struggling against her guards. The beast slammed its horns into the ground, tearing up earth and dust. Ethan coughed, barely able to see. He kept moving, always circling, never giving the beast a straight shot. His arms ached, his legs felt heavy, but he refused to stop. Finally, the beast charged one last time. Ethan sidestepped, using its momentum to drive it into one of the arena's wooden pillars. The impact cracked the wood, and the beast's head stuck for a brief second. Ethan didn't hesitate. He climbed its back, grabbed the spear with both hands and drove it deep into the neck gap. The beast screamed, shuddered, and collapsed in the dust. The crowd exploded in sound, some cheering, others shouting angrily. Ethan dropped to the ground. Breathing hard, he turned to the chief, expecting to hear the trial was over, but the chief raised his staff, and the gate opened again. This time, 3 smaller beasts padded out, their eyes glowing red. Ethan's shoulders tensed. The trial was far from finished. The chief's other plans. The last of the smaller beasts hit the ground. Its red eyes dimmed, and its body went still. Ethan stood over it, chest heaving, His spear was broken in half. His arms and legs burned with exhaustion. The dust in the arena was thick, swirling in the faint breeze. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the crowd erupted into a roar, half cheers, half anger. Some shouted Ethan's name in their language. Others spat at the ground. He had survived, but it didn't feel like victory. The alien chief stepped forward, his staff striking the ground with a deep thud. The sound silenced the entire arena. He walked toward Ethan, his sharp eyes studying every detail. "You fight with skill," the chief said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "You fight with the mind of a hunter, not prey." Ethan didn't answer. His body screamed for rest, but his mind was alert. He could feel something coming. The chief stopped a few steps away. "You may live," he said. The crowd reacted with mixed voices, some in approval, some in protest. "But," the chief continued, raising a hand for silence, "you will not leave." Ethan's jaw tightened. That wasn't the deal. The chief's lips curled into a thin smile. "There was never a deal, human." He turned slightly, gesturing toward Lyra, who was still bound at the side of the arena. "She is free because you won," the chief said. "But you are mine now." Ethan's muscles tensed. "What do you want from me?" he asked. The chief's gaze hardened. "Our enemies are coming," he said. "They burn forests, they poison rivers, they kill without honor." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Ethan could hear. "They will not expect a human to lead the hunt against them." Ethan blinked. "Lead?" "Yes," the chief said. "You will command my hunters." "I'm not one of you," Ethan replied. The chief's eyes glinted. "Exactly, you think differently. You see paths we do not. That is why you live." Ethan glanced at Lyra. Her eyes were wide, and she shook her head slowly. She mouthed a single word, "trap." The chief noticed and gave a small laugh. "She fears me," he said, "and she should. But you should fear what is coming more." The chief turned away, raising his staff high. The warriors struck the ground with their spears, making the earth tremble. "You will fight for the great trees," the chief declared to the crowd, "until our enemies are dead." Ethan's heart pounded. He didn't know these people, didn't owe them anything. But he could see something in the chief's eyes, something that said this was not an offer. The warriors moved in around him. Lyra called out in her language, struggling against her guards. The chief didn't even look at her. Instead, he looked straight at Ethan and said quietly, "You have a choice: fight with us, or die here." The crowd began to chant again, their voices echoing through the trees. Ethan's hands tightened into fists. He had faced beasts, he had faced death, but now he was facing something far worse, being caught in a war that wasn't his, and he knew the next move he made would decide everything. The choice, the chanting of the alien crowd shook the air like distant thunder. Ethan stood in the center of the arena, the chief's words still burning in his ears. "Fight with us, or die here." Around him, warriors tightened their circle, spears aimed at his chest. The glow from their weapons painted his skin in ghostly blue light. Above, the treetop bridges were filled with onlookers, silent now, waiting for his answer. Lyra was still bound at the far side. Her silver hair clung to her face, her eyes locked on him with urgent fear. She shook her head once, slow and deliberate. It was a warning, but also a plea. Ethan's chest rose and fell, his mind racing. If he refused, the spears would end him in seconds. If he agreed, he would be stepping into a war he didn't understand. And every instinct told him the chief would never truly let him go. The chief raised his staff, the crowd's chant falling instantly silent. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Choose, human," he said. "Your life, or your death." The words hung heavy in the air. Ethan's hand twitched toward the broken spear shaft still lying on the arena floor. The warriors noticed, shifting slightly, ready to strike. But Ethan didn't move. He was thinking, not about himself, but about Lyra. The chief had tied her fate to his, and that meant whatever choice he made would decide hers too. He took a step forward, eyes never leaving the chief. "I'll fight," he said slowly. The crowd roared, the sound rolling like a storm through the village. The chief's lips curved in a satisfied smile. But Ethan's voice cut through the noise. "But it will be my way." The chief tilted his head, studying him. A moment of silence passed before he nodded once. "So be it," he said. He lowered his staff, and the warriors stepped back, but their eyes stayed on Ethan, sharp and watchful. 2 guards moved to unbind Lyra. She stumbled forward, still staring at him. Her voice was low, almost lost in the noise. "You've just put yourself in the middle of something you can't escape," she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. He already knew she was right. The chief turned and began walking toward the high platforms. "Tomorrow," he called over his shoulder, "you meet your hunters." The crowd erupted into another chant, stamping the ground in rhythm. Ethan stood in the middle of it all. His eyes followed the chief until he vanished into the shadows above. Lyra's voice broke through the noise one last time. "Ethan, there's something you need to know about this war," she said. Before she could finish, a warrior shoved them forward. The crowd's roar swallowed her words. The scene faded into the dim light of the forest night, the sound of drums growing louder, faster. Somewhere deep inside the village, a second horn blew, a sound darker, heavier, and Ethan knew. Whatever he had just agreed to, it was already too late to turn back.